We're starting to get a trickle of pre-season 2 apology or excuse articles, and I believe this one from Game Evac.
I'm French! Why do you think I have this outrageous accent?
Yeah. I know my hat's all crazy. Let's just get through this video. Title of the article is Wheel of Time Books and How They Differ from the Amazon series. Where have I heard this before? I guess personally, what I did not expect was just how radically they had mutilated a beloved franchise and also changing the fundamental canon of the main character of the entire 15-book series. The need for change in the medium's force, alterations in all book-to-screen adaptation, and Amazon's Wheel of Time is no exception, except the problem is that they didn't actually bother to try and adapt it. This article says many additions and removals have divided the existing fandom. I don't really think so. I think 90% would not call this show even vaguely, even notionally, an adaptation, except that the names of the characters were taken. The article goes on, some hate how the series has been tweaked thus far. Well, tweaked is definitely the word. On crack, not an adaptation, delusional, the Rosamund Pike show, everybody can be a Taverin show. It's not the Wheel of Time.
Rand is a problem for them because they want Egwene to be the main character. So they may get rid of him. They may turn him. I don't freaking know. He may become a Forsaken for all I know. I don't know, but I don't think Rand will not be Rand. Rand will be some thing that is called Rand. Whether he's dead or not, it won't look anything like the Rand al'Thor we know.
This article claims others have embraced the tweaks. Not even Brandon Sanderson embraced the tweaks. In a long post on Reddit, Brandon Sanderson lays it out. Quote, the biggest thing Rafe Judkins and I disagreed with was on Perrin's wife. I realized that there is a good opportunity here for Perrin to be shown with rage issues, but I didn't like it being a wife for multiple reasons. First off, it feels a lot like the disposable wipe trope, aka woman in the fridge. Beyond that, I think the trauma of having killed your wife is so huge, the story this is telling can't realistically deal with it in a way that is responsible. Perrin killing his wife and then going off on an adventure really bothers me even still. Unquote. Distinctions have been made between the novels and the show for better or worse. What are you talking about? This is not an adaptation. Anyone who watched this show and liked it, God help them, thinking this was Wheel of Time, and then went to go buy Robert Jordan's books, which is what I hope keeps happening, would not in any way recognize the book that they bought watching what Rafe Judkins did. Quote, it's not an adaptation of the books to me. It's an adaptation of the next time these people are living in this story. Unquote. He has every right to say that. Do I believe that in my heart? I personally don't. Which is the exact same thing we people who have read the book feel when we watch the show. Now, does that qualify as an adaptation? Distinctions between the books. Some were small and had little to no effect on the show as a whole. Who's writing this? Such as Tom Maryland's lack, oh Christ, of a long, bushy mustache. Well, you know what? There was a hell of a lot more missing than Tom's long, bushy mustache, such as his cloak of many colors, if we're just going to stay superficial. Okay, not only that, but the key role that Tom Maryland played in training both Rand and Matt how to play musical instruments because they would need to take care of themselves. on the road after they were separated, after what happened at Shader Logoth. There's a scene that this show didn't do that's iconic of Rand and Matt's escape from that city. And again, everything that happened in that city was completely not in this show, including why Matt finding the dagger was such a big deal. So it's not just Tom's facial hair. Tom was a mentor. He was a guide. He was a grandfatherly figure who taught them how to be worldly young men, to go from small town boys to young men who could make it on their own in the huge world outside of Emmons Field. Well, we all know what intersectional entertainment has done since all of this crap has started. You cannot have a male mentor teach young men anything. In this show, it has to be Rosamund Pike. Hopefully, the showrunners and writers have been up to the task as production on season 2 comes to a close. Whoever wrote this, production came to a close over a year ago. The show has been sitting on the shelf. Maybe they did some post-production work since then. Maybe. But this show was completed primary shooting last May. It's not going to come out until September of this year. Over a year later. Are you familiar with the Doors? The Doors. I mean, I'm not talking about Jim Morrison. I'm talking about the Doors. Well, this article calls them the Doors. I think they mean the ways. According to the article, the dark paths, a maze of bridges that greatly shorten travel time if you can survive, kind of a misrepresentation, but let's just roll with it, are accessible by footbridges. Are they? Really? No. They're accessible in Robert Jordan's story, which you wouldn't know if you watch this show, by waygates. Now, waygates in the book are found by Loyal, who knows how to navigate them, not Rosamund Pike. The way they open could have a big influence on future plotlines, though their appearance varies greatly from show and medium. What? According to the literature, the only way to open and close the doors is by removing and replacing a stone clover. Maybe there's an French to English translation problem happening here.
Mind your own business.
Although there is a picture of Padden Fane holding that stone clover, according to this article, the show simply offers channeling, which means, again, why? Because Rosamund Pike is the star of the show. I did a video on that, which is not at all how it works in the books. Those who can access the waygates will be substantially affected if this change is not removed. So, again, it's not the story. This is not how the story went, but more importantly, there are characters whose agency within the Robert Jordan books and the world was taken away to give Rosamund Pike more power and to take away power from Loyal, who's, to me, one of the most loved characters in the books. I mean, you couldn't tell by what Rafe Judkins did in the show. He looks like a really non-passing drag queen Tina Turner. And then this actor would actually make a great Loyal if somebody actually did an adaptation, and if somebody actually knew how to costume, and if somebody actually let this guy be the Loyal that's in the books. Now, I'd like to think this is a French to English translation issue, but rug lagging behind. Rug lagging behind. I don't know what that means. In the conclusion of the 6th episode of The Abomination that was Amazon's Wheel of Time, it features one of the biggest departures from the books. Well, there were after episode 3, the bait and switch took off. Just go look at my videos from last year. We are 3 episodes in, and I have no idea why the word Wheel of Time is on the title card for this show. It is definitely starting to feel like Rafe Judkins just flipped through some book pages, closed his eyes, stuck his finger on a paragraph and said, yeah, let's take that. In order to enter the Blight, oh, don't even get me started about the Blight, and fight the Dark One, that's not really what happened. The group gathers in front of the Waygate. At this stage in the drama, Rosamund Pike is still of the opinion that any one of the 5 residents of Two Rivers could be the Dragon Reborn. Those of you who've read the books, what's wrong with that statement? Scream it at the television, scream it at your phone. That's right. The Dragon Reborn can only be a man. It's always been that way, will always be that way. You can say it's another turning the wheel. That doesn't change the fact that the Dragon Reborn has always been and will be a man. So she was looking for a boy. So that would not leave 5 from Emmons Field that could be the Dragon Reborn. That drops us down to 3. Rand, Matt, and Perrin. Now, this show, after whatever happened with Barney Harris, and I hope everything's okay with that dude, he is going to be in a production on Welsh television. I think it's coming out at the end of this year. Go ahead and Google it and look it up. It's actually a story about a supernatural thriller period piece. It looks kind of cool. But when Matt doesn't enter the Waygate when it closes, the entire company is shocked. Well, I don't know what the hell happened on that series of television. I do think that Barney Harris would have been an amazing Matt. Again, if, like with Loyal, if they had actually done a fairly faithful adaptation, if somebody had bothered to write Matt, not as a degenerate who steals from women. In the book, his father is an upstanding citizen and a good family man, but in the show, they made him a philandering asshole, and his mother is an alcoholic because it's his drunk father's fault. Do you see what it is that is behind this show? When you bring writers in, like Rafe Judkins did, like Amanda Schumann and the others who write for CW, who write for Chuck, who write for these garbage tier shows to do high fantasy, this is what you get. For reasons unknown, Barney Harris, who played Matt, left the production. Although Matt has a new casting, God help you, buddy. I would have done something else, maybe community theater for my career. The change in his plot will need to be handled carefully if Matt is to return to normal in future seasons. Matt was never normal. Never normal. Why? Again, look at the writers behind this. This is the Rosamund Pike show. It should be the Rand Althor show and the Perrin show and the Matt Cawthon show. It should be the 3 boys. With Rosamund Pike being a guiding force, but also Lan being a strong male role model, teaching them the physicality and to be a man, and Tom teaching them how to be wily, be street smart, and also be a man, and have Nynaeve struggle with her ability to go from being one of the most important people in her tiny little village, has a wisdom or a medicine woman, an interpretation I'm going to stick with, and then you've got Egwene who basically tagged along. Now, I'm not going to beat this horse to death. I have nothing against Rosamund Pike. I think she's a capable and competent actress. I wish she would do more period pieces. I wish she would do more legitimate theater as far as period pieces in cinema or even on television, because I think she's exceptionally good at that. I do not think that she is a very good Moiraine the way that she's written in the show. Could she have been a very good Moiraine if this was a semi-faithful adaptation, if they'd written her the way it was in the story, and if they'd let her be a supporting but important flawed character? It'd have worked, but that's not what we got. So I did a video on this again, Rafe Judkins, why is Moiraine still? Because they needed to create a made-up storyline to make sure Rosamund Pike was in all the episodes of season 2 of The Wheel of Time. Why? Because she only appears in book 2, The Great Hunt, less than 8%. It's 1 chapter in a 700-page book. Hence why we got Moiraine stilled. She might not have been stilled. She might have been shielded. I'm not going to legitimize what Rafe Judkins did to this. Okay. They made up some bullshit story based upon what we've seen in season 1. This is a whole lot of nothing. There's going to be a lot of crying in bad looking medieval settings that aren't where they're supposed to be, like Camelin and other places. And then there's going to be a snap of a finger resolution, probably with the power of love. And then there's going to be hugging and more crying. And then that's it. Brings us to Perrin's lost mentor. Yeah, we're going to get apparently Elias in season 2, but obviously not the Elias we know from the books. It was one of the better scenes of when you have Perrin experiencing things when he's on the run and they run into Elias. It's fantastic. And what it does is it sets up some wonderful character arcs that go through multiple books. And I think that's perhaps the greatest tragedy in all of this, is that there were some fantastic arcs. They're just beautiful stories that would draw you in, whether or not you've read the books or you're just watching from the first time, that you just needed to follow those, and you had an instant hit. That's not what Amazon did. That's not what Rafe Judkins did. There are so many gaps in parent stories and parents' characterization. I think that it's hard to say which is the biggest one. The article goes on, Rand leaving the party. Yeah, that didn't happen either. Rand does not go off alone. He returns to Faldara with everyone else and begins training with Land. Why? Because that was established throughout the Eye of the World book. Lan mentoring Rand in sword play. Never saw that once. Gives him a bow. Why? They want him to be Legolas? I don't know. I have said this before. I think Lan is going to teach Nynaeve how to use the sword because it's 2023 and because it's Rafe Judkins. The article goes on, it's unlikely that Rand will now join the hunt for the horn now that he's separated from the group, at least not like he does in the novels. Yeah, they're going to divide them up. It's going to be more Scooby-Doo random bullshit on their own, made up, empty, flat story arcs over 8 episodes, very Rosamund Pike heavy. Again, you can't put the poop season 1 back in the bottle. The Rand reveal was underwhelming to say the least. I do think the actor for this could have probably maybe been a decent Rand al'Thor, but again, if you would have followed the story and tried to actually adapt it, if you had written a script that was not based upon making the boys look dumb and standing 2 steps behind Nynaeve, Egwene, and Moiraine, or Rosamund Pike, I should say, and if you had actually given Rand a sword that didn't look like he got it from Halloween City and was plastic. It's the same problem we're having with when we see images of the girls. Yeah, I'm using that word deliberately. The young women that are now the Aiel holding their plastic spears and bucklers. The show had $80 million for season 1. And I got in some back and forth in some of my comments and some of my episode reviews of people saying, "Oh, well, that was to build a whole studio in the Czech Republic or wherever the hell it was in Eastern Europe." Does it matter? If you got to build your own studio there, why doesn't it look just a little bit better? And don't give me this COVID bullshit anymore. Are we over that? Have we learned any lessons about that in the future with what they're going to do? Article goes on. Rand could travel to Tear. Well, that's what he should be doing if you want to boil it down to basics in The Dragon Reborn. So they're probably going to skip over what does happen with Rand, which is, I don't know, this is kind of makes my brain explode. Let's say that the most basic bitch thing they're going to do is have Rand go to Tear. Spoilers. That's in the 3rd book. It's really important. That is a pivotal moment in the character of Rand al'Thor where he accepts who he is and does battle and gets a very important item, which is symbolic of him being the Dragon Reborn. How much time do you think they're going to spend on it in season 2? Shadar Logoth. In the show, they completely missed the entire point of Shadar Logoth. They had show Matt find a dagger in a dumpster. That's not what happened. In the books, Matt and Rand become separated from the others and end up, I believe it's underground in Shadar Logoth, and wander into an amazing treasure trove full of gold and jewels and weapons and just priceless everything. And there they hear a voice whispering to them. They were warned not to take any of this treasure, any of it. I mean, just untold wealth in there. But Matt, and this is where it gets kind of weird, Matt kind of picks something up and he doesn't even know that he did it, and it's a ruby-hilted dagger. This, of course, was Mordeth tempting Rand and Matt. This is where, again, how hard would it have been to spend some time just doing a scene like that instead of, junkie degenerate steals from woman Matt finds a dagger under a box in an alley? Tell me again how this is an adaptation. Tell me again how Rafe Judkins is a genius. That brings us to the ruby-hilted dagger. Going back to Shader Logoth, this venerable MacGuffin, it's a MacGuffin, has undergone some alterations. It wasn't a MacGuffin, it was key to the story that Robert Jordan wrote. On the surface, the ruby of the dagger has generally been depicted as being set on the pommel. Instead, the production team claims this was adjusted solely to make the ruby stand out more when picked up. Again, picked up in an alley by Matt instead of involving Mordeth and Rand in a huge treasure room where they're being tempted. This article says the alterations of the dangerous nature of this dagger make it more intriguing in the show. After all, what did we see happen to Loial in season 1? He was stabbed by the dagger by the show's Padden Fane. Now, what should have happened to Loial? He should be dead as fried chicken. They ain't no coming back from being stabbed by that dagger. Well, what have we seen in season 2? Loyal's back. Loyal's back. So what that means is just like the story, the characters, the importance, everything that made the Wheel of Time series memorable, beloved, been removed by the showrunner, the writers. That brings us to the big finale. Episode 8, it brings us to the big finale. It's kind of hard to read these articles because now I'm getting kind of pissed off. You know, where we went was actually the eye of the world. That's why the book is called The Eye of the World. You would have never known that just watching this television show. Why is it important? In the book, Rand draws on what is a pure, uncut pool of the male side of the one power. That would be Sadine. Because in this world, much like in the real world, there's only 2 genders. After drawing this power out of the eye of the world, he is able to do battle with the Forsaken and also uses that power against the Trollic army that is attacking at Tarwin's Gap. What did they do in the show? That's right. Whammon in charge. And Egwene has to heal 9 and show Egwene has to heal Nynaeve from the dead, because you can do that. In Rafe Judkins' adaptation, the problem with that is that is something that they say deliberately in the books. No I should ever, ever, ever do. But, I mean, again, at this point, with all the things Rafe Judkins has done, of course he's going to do this. Finally, the number of Ta'Veren. Seen articles where Rafe Judkins says he's going to introduce even more Ta'Veren. So maybe there'll be 6 or 7, because we have to play Magical Mystery Box, because they can't actually tell a story and they don't know how to do it. Now, what is it Ta'Veren? Simply put, I'm going to use this article's logic. You yell at the article, not at me. Ta'Veren is a person who over a period of time has substantial influence over the great pattern of the wheel and changes events around him. That's important. So a Ta'Veren is someone who essentially all of the events of the world and all the people within their orbit are consciously and unconsciously affected by how important they are in what is called the pattern or reality. Now, the most important person in all of this is the Dragon Reborn, which has been and only ever will be a man, Rand al'Thor, in this turning of the wheel. Even the other Ta'Veren, like Perrin and Matt, are affected unconsciously and consciously by what Rand needs and does. So you tell me, how can you call this an adaptation? What are they doing? What are they adapting? They're not adapting a goddamn thing. They're stealing names and making up a much substandard story without the characters, without any arcs.
Like there are 3 phases in the motor, and I have to credit Pips for using the motor analogy for the pattern. Like 3 phases, there are 3 Ta'Veren.
Not Nynaeve, not Egwene, and now Rafe Judkins is talking about introducing yet another Ta'Veren made up for season 2.
Mm-hmm.
Because why not? Because this is a faithful adaptation. And those of us who don't like it, well, we're just racists and phobic and we're toxic book fans. We're divisive. Egwene and Nynaeve had been added to the roster for the TV series. Having 2 more could make certain plots more interesting because strange things happen around Ta'Veren. The problem with this is that you can play with this and you could write your fan fiction, but you cannot call what Judkins is doing by adding not just, as we talked about, Egwene and Nynaeve as Ta'Veren, but something completely wholesale made up. And I'm going to say it's probably a trans character. Why not? Because that's the thing. And look for climate change in season 2. Why? Because that's all entertainment is. It's propaganda. I talked about this a lot, traveling to Tar Valon instead of Camelin. They made a bunch of excuses as to why COVID and all this other stuff and At the end of the day, and I've talked about it in my videos from the episodes at the time, it's important because, again, it would have focused on Rand being the main protagonist of this story. That never happened. And I'm convinced in season 2, it still won't happen. Now, there isn't a Elaine cast for season 2. What are they going to do with her? They're going to do the same thing they've done to every other one of these characters. Probably overpower her, probably make her gay, probably have her not at all be the kind of insufferable, kind of spoiled bitch that she was in the books in the beginning. She should have met Rand. We'll never get that scene. Instead, they'll probably put her in the tower and whatever, and yay. So there you have it, from Game of Ek, the Wheel of Time books and how they differ from the Amazon series. It was interesting looking at the French to English translation.
Your mother was a hamster, and your father smelt of elderberries.
Again, even in other languages, this is the excuse tour. This is the rationalizing tour. I'm Salty Traveling C. Have a good 4th of July.